Hi, I have another true account of the Native American Indian um, in days gone by, and this is a true account, as I said. This was published probably in 1900 and 1915, but the account actually predates that by probably more than a century. So it's simply called the Indian Fugitive, and I hope that you'll find it as interesting as I. A beautiful autumn day, now many years ago, that several well-mounted men rode gaily across the region of which lies between the Rocky Mountains and the Cascades. They belonged to the train of the United States government commissioners and had been assisting at a palaver with the red men, framing laws and rules which were sure to be broken as soon as favorable opportunity presented itself. To return to the delights of civilization was a pleasant prospect, and our travelers were well contented with their position. Besides, the weather was beautiful. They were in the country of the friendly Indians, and therefore there was nothing to fear. And as abundance of game was to be had, the expedition had more the flavor of a picnic party than of serious business. How pleasant it was to camp down for the night beside a fire of sagebrush, smoking their pipes, and talk over the events of the day or the prospects of the morrow, and then to roll themselves up, each man in his blanket, and enjoy that dreamless repose which falls to those who spend much of their time in the open air. On one of these occasions, they were startled by the sudden appearance of an unexpected visitor. He was an Indian, mounted on a shabby-looking horse, and in ragged and scanty garments. None of the party could understand much of his speech, yet he made himself very much at home, and without having to wait for an invitation, finished the remains of their supper with the greatest of avidity. And that the poor creature was half starving was very well evident to all. Upon being questioned, he said that he had fled from his own tribe, having committed some grave offense, and his enemies were upon his track. And seeing the campfire of the strangers, he had resolved to put himself under their protection. In short, he intended to remain with them. But this was not at all to their mind. They had no desire to embroil themselves with his tribe, or, indeed, with any of the red men. They accordingly requested him to be off, but he altogether declined to entertain the idea, and coolly lay down by the fire and was presently asleep. Now the next morning he made himself so useful in catching the horses, and begged so piteously to be allowed to travel with the party, that humanity prevailed, and he was recognized as a member of the party. Now, ere 3 days had passed, this poor Indian had so ingratiated himself with his protectors that he had received sundry presents: a butcher's knife from one, a shirt from another, an old blanket from a third, and the knife he apparently set his great value on, probably as a weapon of offense against the enemy whom he so much dreaded. Now, one morning, after traveling about 2 miles on their way to the Indian, suddenly remembered that he had left his precious knife at the campfire, and lightening his horse of all superfluous weight, including his blanket, he rode back, declaring that he would overtake the party very soon. So slowly they jogged along. Still he never overtook them. They camped down very early that night, but the Indian did not put in an appearance. Being now seriously uneasy about the poor fellow, they all remounted and rode back under the light of the beautiful moon. And as they cantered along, a silence seemed to fall over the party. Each man, however, looking well to the loading of his revolver and of the trusty rifle which lay across the saddlebow. Soon they reached the prairie, which they had left in the morning. Then they suddenly drew up. Something was stirring among the bushes, apparently coming in their direction. More than one revolver was leveled in that direction ere they discovered that the noise proceeded from the the Indian's poor old horse who was grazing about, and who joined himself to the other horses with great apparent pleasure. That some calamity had happened to the poor Indian was now apparent to everyone, and indeed they had not far to go ere they came upon a very sorry sight. In a wooded hollow lay the body of the poor Indian, dead and pierced with 3 Indian arrows. The avengers of blood had been tracking him day after day, but had feared to attack him so long as the white men and their rifles were present. Alas, the poor Indian, his butcher's knife had cost him his life. So it's an interesting little tale, and I hope that you enjoyed that. And it's always interesting to look at Indian legends and mythology and true tales. They're a fascinating, colorful culture that got really spat on by the European interlopers. So I hope you enjoyed that, and God willing, I'll be back with you real soon with another hopefully interesting story for you. And God bless each and every one of you on the other side of that screen. I love you always.